What would a war between the USA and Mexican drug cartels look like? Lotta drone strikes on civilian locations. Very little military mobilization. Well, it'd probably look less like a traditional war and more like the worst game of whack-a-mole you've ever seen, only with considerably higher stakes and no actual moles. The cartels are more shadowy, spread out, and embedded within communities, which makes them a tricky target for any sort of conventional forces. Plus, every time you think you've got a handle on one group, two more pop up. It'd be a mix of covert operations, intense surveillance, and a never-ending series of action movie trailers, but with a budget that makes even Hollywood balk. Like Vietnam, the US would have no idea who the actual enemy is, would kill lots of civilians, get ambushed all the time, and end up causing way more damage than doing nothing would. And that's skirting the whole issue of the US Army waging war against civilians in another country without that country's permission. That is also an act of war, so would probably end up with an actual war with Mexico. Honestly, it would be a chaotic mess with high civilian casualties and political fallout. The US does fight cartels in other countries. The military, FBI, CIA et al. Fight in the glorious war on drugs. Of course, it's really kind of a you broke it, you bought it thing. America's Squad is primarily responsible for creating the cartels to begin with. If we ramp that up, we would only create more powerful cartels. All of America's glorious wars on concepts are based on the bogus premise that you can solve a problem by shooting the symptoms. A lot of civilian death. Staying within ROE something between Afghanistan and Vietnam with the US slaughtering lots of people and winning nothing. Not only the cartels would hide and have the advantage of being in their own country, lots of people actually support them, or just hate them less than they hate the US, so it'd be asymmetrical warfare all over the country, and probably deep into the US. If ROE go out of the window, then the US wins the war in half an hour with WW2-style carpet bombing. The cartels have lots of weapons and they'd probably down a few helicopters, but nothing that can defend them against an actual air raid or anything like that. The government isn't exactly prepared for war and the healthcare system is way too shitty not to be overwhelmed by any kind of fighting. Source: a Mexican living in Mexico City. Very, very bloody. 1. It won't be a hot war. It will be a wet war, and we won't hear about it until there are congressional hearings years from now. 2. We are risking starting a real war with Mexico, and that's just dumb. 3. If you don't want drugs in the US, fix our healthcare system, and make treatment easy and affordable. The only reason the cartels have power is because we buy their drugs. Here's an idea: legalize the illegal drugs. It's hard to have a gang when you can buy the shit at Walgreens. Then treat addiction as a disease, not a crime. When's the last time you heard of a drive-by drug killing in Holland or Portugal? Remember, prohibition led to the growth of the mafia and Al Capone, among others. Illicit drugs are no different. Win every single battle, but lose the war just like how Afghanistan-Vietnam War went. So yeah, it's another repeat of history and disgrace, and Americans didn't learn anything. The only way it is possible is to throw away rules of engagement and destroy Mexico by overwhelming force. Civilians would die en masse, and the US would need to be willing to accept extreme domestic terrorism from insurgents on American soil. It would be an extreme bloodbath, and when it's all over, drugs will come right back. The only logical answer is to strengthen the Mexican government's resolve to fight the cartels themselves. It may not be the most politically correct solution, but designating cartels as terrorists and actively engaging them as enemy combatants within a DMZ, as well as making drug trafficking and immigration a much more extreme punishment. This will drive the cost of drugs up, which hopefully makes them not cost-effective when trafficking carries a life sentence or death penalty. And Mexico the is willing to drone strike anyone within the DMZ, they'll have less opportunity to move goods. The truth though still stands that it is the US problem of consumption. Messy. Pretty much what you see going on in Gaza. Hiding in plain sight among civilians, forcing the US military to engage them in residential areas, with the end result being the slaughtering of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of innocent Mexicans caught in the crossfire. Not a good metric. An absolute disaster. Can't kill the supplier if the demand is there. A new head will keep popping up on the snake after the head is cut off. Would drone strike all their leaders within 6 weeks. It disband them until we leave. Then business as usual within a month. Like USA just needs to stop buying drugs. That would deal quite the blow. A lot like the war on terror, I suspect. Cartels aren't going to wear uniforms and march in lines, they are going to blend into the population. They also have much of the Mexican government on their payroll, so they won't be much help. They may even begin bribing our officials. It would be a huge bloodbath and very logistical. The National Guard would probably be on night, and day patrols along with SWAT. The country would be locked down due to cartels that already have strongholds here causing unrest. On the Mexico side, we'd be bombing cartel strongholds with drones. Infantry rolling through wouldn't be a good idea. It'd have to be bombings, very precise ones. Not sure if you know this or not, but we're really good at killing innocent civilians in the USA. So just think like 1 out of every 15 deaths will be a cartel member. We use drones almost exclusively, and we honestly don't care who is on the receiving end of that missile as long as we eventually get a bad guy.